Hi, I'm Brian Levy. I'm the Chief Relationship Officer at Manchester Living and the host of the Manchester Living podcast. The purpose of the podcast is to help people navigate the complex maze of elder care. There's a lexicon of elder care terms on the website at manchesterlivingpodcast.com. All right, we're doing something a little different today. We're going off script. I typically say this is not an endorsement or product placement for anything or anyone. It's not monetized at all. We're doing a little something different today. I have two guests that work with me as my colleagues on the show today. So we're talking about Manchester Care Homes and Cambridge Caregivers as it relates to caregiver training. In full disclosure, one of the two guests has the same last name as I do. She's my wife. All right, on today's episode, the importance of caregiver training. But first, new and noteworthy. As serious as caregiving is, you have to find humor in what we do or you won't do it well. So let's roll the clip.
If you are adept at opening doors with your butt so you can pull a wheelchair, you might be a caregiver.
If you start dividing your M&Ms into a pill box, chances are you're a caregiver.
If you are on a first name basis with a hospital security guard, see you tomorrow, Earl, you might be a caregiver.
If you've ever used Neosporin as a verb,
Do it.
hold still, baby. I got a Neosporin this so we can get to church on time.
Gosh. If you've ever hooked up your dog to your wife's wheelchair just to see if it would work, please tell me you have not done this one.
I might have some video.
Really?
Yeah.
I want to see it.
All right, thanks for that laugh. Today we're talking about caregiver training. Training is integral to our mission, and at the heart of our approach is the Manchester Living Institute. Here we equip our staff with a diverse array of skills, from stress management to specialized dementia care to bereavement support. Each session is comprehensive, aimed at cultivating the expertise needed to provide exceptional care for our Cambridge Caregivers clients and our residents at Manchester Care Homes. What sets us apart is our commitment to offering a diverse training program and compensating our caregivers for their time. We recognize the value they bring to our organization. Our staff are our biggest asset. I'm excited today to welcome Tammy Hooker and Sandi Levy. Tammy, I'll let you introduce yourself. Who are you and what do you do?
Well, my name is Tammy Hooker, and I'm responsible for human resources and training and development for Manchester Living, and that includes the Manchester Living Institute.
Welcome. Sandi, who are you and what do you do?
I'm Sandi Levy. I am the Director of Nursing for Manchester Care Homes and Cambridge Caregivers. I oversee the care needs of all of our residents, and I work with the staff on training and making sure they are up to par with their skills and knowledge.
Wonderful. Welcome. Thanks for being here. Tammy, I'm going to start with you. Why should a client or prospective resident family care about caregiver training?
Well, thank you for having me today.
Sure.
I'm excited to talk about this. In the Cambridge world, the client should really care about caregiver training, not only the technical parts of training, but the behavioral parts of how a caregiver performs. The often undefined meeting them where they are, knowing how to respond, and anticipate what clients need. A client really needs to understand that a caregiver is so much more than technical expertise. And if you look at an agency like ours, we really emphasize that. We emphasize the initiative, the confidence, the ability to respond individually to a client's needs. That's why they should care about training.
Great. Will you also elaborate on our 7 core values as we talk about them all day, every day with our staff?
Absolutely. So our core values are also our competencies. So they include the interactions that need to be respectful. And these are things that Sandi does every single day. So they're really easy for me to remember. Respect, initiative, client service, technical excellence, compassion, teamwork, and of course, the big one being indispensable, and professional development. So we do all of those things when we interview people. We look for their answers to demonstrate that they interact in a respectful way, that they demonstrate initiative. It's very easy to get an answer like that. For example, it's hot outside. I mean, there's 9 months of summer in Texas. If a caregiver says, I demonstrated with my client initiative because it was going to be 106, and I decided to make popsicles that morning so that I could keep my client hydrated. That demonstrates initiative to me and compassion.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the things we look for, and those are the things that we built the training program on. So all of the technical things they do, the clinical things, the safety things, all of the interactions with the client, we do them through the lens of competency.
Thank you. You mentioned interview process. Will you please elaborate?
Sure.
What is our interview process?
We interview differently than other agencies, I am certain. The first interview is a phone interview that is behavioral based, and it's based on those competencies. Tell me about your most memorable client. Hard stop. How do they answer that? Do they talk about a connection? Do they talk about meeting them where they are? Do they talk about how they built confidence with that client? How did they do that? Why is it meaningful to them? You'll get an answer sometimes about a difficult client. The most memorable client could be a very difficult client, or one that they built a really strong bond with, which I know is our goal in the care homes. So we do those behavioral-based interviews. They don't get to the second interview, which is a technical, skill-based interview. So they get both of it, but they don't get through the gate if they can't demonstrate how they demonstrate respect, how they interact with other caregivers as a team, and how they interact with clients. So we do a full 360-degree interview process for our caregivers before they ever take a shift.
Sandi, do you want to elaborate on the interview process for caregivers in the care homes?
It's very similar to Tammy's. I mean, we follow the same, obviously, all the same core values. But when we're interviewing from Manchester, I'm looking more for experience in a care home setting. People who have worked in care homes, been familiar with group settings versus just one-on-one in a private duty.
Yeah.
So
We
it's a
talk
little bit
about
different.
knowledge is power. Elaborate on that as it relates to the caregivers in the real world setting.
Knowledge is power. We work very hard as a group. I think our whole team, HR, staff, managers, on making sure our caregivers are very adept in their skills. And we want them to not just to know how to do something, but to feel good about it. So we really we play games. We figure out ways to help a caregiver understand why we're doing something a certain way. So I think that's where.
Tammy, how do we
It's
do
very
it differently
powerful.
at Cambridge?
Well, I'm going to piggyback on what Sandi just said. The engagement that she just described, the working together as a team, it was really important to take that philosophy and port it to Cambridge, which is challenging because it's a different work environment, and people can feel isolated. You don't see them every single day. Cambridge took the Manchester model and has created it for caregivers by developing a very intense training program. I think we have 42 classes this year, 42 sessions this year that are obviously paid training, which include, grief counseling, how to work through the connections with the client that's passed. How do you cope with that? Specific dementia training that is really based on the philosophy in the Manchester care homes about meeting people where they are, slow, gentle, confidence, unique, to the individual. And then finally, taking the competencies and giving the caregivers the power and confidence to know that they can respond individually to their clients. And we know they're going to perform. That was really important on the Cambridge side for the clients and for the whole organization. So we built it based on the Manchester model.
Great. Tammy, what does it say about a company who invests in training like we do?
To make that investment means that we value our resources, or we value those caregivers. Our CEO will say all the time, we don't put hands on people. They put hands on people. What is more important than to spend our money and our resources and our time investing in your interaction with a client? I mean, that's the human connection, and it's worth investing. And we do truly respect the professional development of all of our caregivers. And it says a lot about a company that we're not just doing, video training, training online. We are doing roadshow, real hands-on collaborative teamwork training led by Manchester Care Home managers and stellar Cambridge caregivers. So that builds a little bit of a mentor program too. So that is lifetime professional development training, and our investment. I mean, that's what the business that we're in is, to provide wonderful, highly qualified, indispensable caregivers. And so, of course, that's where we spend our money.
Gold standard. I love it.
Yeah.
Sandi, how does our training program improve client service and client experience? We're going to use client interchangeable. So let's talk about Manchester residents.
Just the training that we provide to our staff to help them build the confidence to work with our clients and residents on the highest level. Everyone has different needs. So every day is different. And I always tell everybody, my job is different every day. So certainly the caregiver's job is different every day. We don't know how someone's going to feel and, what we're going to be doing. We may have had an activity or something planned, and then we have to divert to something different because they're not feeling well or they have something going on that we're going to, divert to another activity. But as far as keeping them engaged, we work very hard to help the caregivers understand how to properly interact one-on-one with each client. As Tammy said, we meet them where they are and enter their world.
Great. Tammy, for Cambridge?
The goal of the training program is to improve the quality of the care and therefore the relationship with the client. How does it improve the client with our trained caregivers? It's sort of like, if I can give you an example, when you start to learn to paint, you do paint by number, right? And so in the caregiver, that means I can do a transfer using proper body mechanics. I understand what all of the tools are in front of me, but I don't know how to do it on my own yet. Our caregivers don't paint by number. They have the tools, they understand the tools, but they're able to customize their reaction, their anticipation for each unique client. And that can't be beat. That's what a client really wants. Some clients want you closer to them. Some clients don't want you that close. Understanding that as a caregiver, being able to shift gears and continue to stay engaged at the level that meets them where they are is really beneficial to a client. Our whole goal is to make every single day that a caregiver is with a client their very best day.
That's great. So we talk about, let's talk about ongoing training. Sandi, you're in the care homes. We have 4 care homes. You're in each care home probably twice a day. What are you doing?
It is ongoing training.
It is ongoing
all
training.
day, every day. And I think it's fun when we have the residents that are quite verbal and they'll watch me and they'll listen and they'll chime in. It is quite humorous.
Some being former nurses that want to tell you how to do your job.
We have a few residents that were nurses, and I'll give you an example. The other day, I was giving medicine to one, and she's very, very funny. And she turned to me after I gave her the medicine. She goes, "Well, I sure hope you know what you're doing."
Oh, that's
I said, "Well, I sure hope I do also." But they're fun, and the caregivers, like you said, training them with different shifts and things like that. I will show up at different times of the day. And if I know they're doing a certain activity or a certain, a meal or something at a certain time, and I know that a certain resident is having trouble in that area, like starting to have trouble swallowing or something like that, I'll show up for that meal time. I'll work with the staff. I'll demonstrate. I'll, role model for them and explain to them why the resident's having the change and why we have to adapt to them. And that, to keep them safe and healthy and happy and, well fed.
Aside from formalized Cambridge training, I see caregivers stopping by the office all the time, and they're coming in for a brush up or an instruction on something specific. Can you elaborate a little bit on that, aside from the formal training sessions that we do?
Caregivers do drop in for extra training, advice, collaboration, et cetera. The benefit of doing that and some of the benefit of our intensive 6-hour training program is learning from each other. Sandi has the benefit of being in the care home with the caregivers, with the live resident. She can demonstrate. Our Cambridge caregivers can come to the office and we can show them on, we have this thing called PAT,
We can simulate.
We can simulate it. Thank
yes.
you.
Mhm.
So we can simulate a situation. I can think of one particular situation where we had a caregiver that really wasn't moving someone from one chair to a wheelchair in a way that was best for our caregiver. She was straining when she was doing it. So we had our CNA show her multiple ways to transfer from the deep lounge chair, low position, properly to a wheelchair, which can be really tough if you don't know what you're doing on your back. So that was a really great example. And we've had people come in and learn how to use sliding boards. We've had people come in and just talk about how to interact with a particular client. Our marketing team, our community liaison team, knows the clients inside and out. And so I see caregivers coming in to talk to the community liaison team about what's happening in their engagement. How can I do this better? They have a particular preference. I don't understand it. Tell me how best to meet that client's needs. I hear that all the time. So that's kind of the benefit for Cambridge to be able to pop in, because we don't have Sandi and other caregivers when they're with the residents,
Right.
or when they're with a client. So they know to come in. They know to come in. And I guess part of the training program that's so unique about our intense 6-hour training program is that is all team-based. That is a really great opportunity. It's deliberately team-based because I had to try to replicate what happens in Manchester Care Homes. And part of that is working together, coming up with, we'll try it this way. You could answer it this way. So they are able
Helping
to
them understand
collaborate.
that it's not always the same.
Yeah, it's
It'll
not.
be different with each person.
And caregivers are human beings, and clients and residents are human beings. It's very difficult to predict what each day is going to look like.
Sure.
And so the more we can prepare them for, I had a conversation with my peer caregiver who approached dealing with a lost client in a grocery store differently than I did. And therefore they can talk about it. So there's a real benefit to that. It was very hard to replicate what it feels like to work in a home setting with caregivers that are dispersed throughout Dallas, Fort Worth, and Houston.
Yeah.
And that's what we've
It's completely different. Yes,
Yeah.
it's a big challenge for sure.
How do you effectively train considering various language barriers? 80% of our staff are foreign-born immigrants. There is a language barrier. How do you train like that?
Do you want me to start with that?
You can go ahead.
Sure, Sandi.
I have noticed that there's definitely a language barrier. I'll ask the caregivers. I always want to know, where they're from, what their culture. Ask them a lot of questions. First of all, to understand how much they can understand and how I can understand them. So communication. If they can communicate with me, then they should be able to communicate with the resident and the families. So we will, we'll go through a lot of things, and then I will ask them questions, and then in a very non-threatening manner. And have them, well, can you repeat that? How you would complete that task, and then let's go do it. Let's go try it together, and then we'll go into the resident's room and we'll try it together. Whether it's repositioning, feeding, even just raising the bed up to a certain level. There are so many guidelines that we have that the caregivers learn and perform. So it's all about understanding their language. Back to this question, is just trying to understand that they can understand what we're saying. And I'll ask the caregiver, how many languages do you speak? And sometimes English is their fourth. So they'll speak multiple, and good for them. I mean, they're brilliant.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, English is not always at the top. So we work with them, and I'll know if English is their fourth language, third or fourth. I'm going to give them a little more time because it might take them a little more time to process and understand what it is I'm trying to explain and teach. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a big deal. I think a lot of it's out. We're going to all be seeing that and noticing it. And we love having multicultural caregivers. So it's our job, I think, to bring them in and help them understand.
Great. Tammy, on the Cambridge side?
That's a great question. It is. And it's a real life question. I mentioned before how our interview process works. We start with a phone conversation.
If you can't understand them on the phone, you're not going to understand them bedside, right?
But when I have noticed that slower communication helps and listening in a different way. Some other languages, you think they're done talking, but they've just kind of started. So understanding how the language pattern works helps. I will say that in our training programs, when people are all together, it is by design that our trainers, one of the trainers, we always have two trainers, a Manchester and a Cambridge caregiver. One of them is not English as a first language. And there's a better connection with how things are described, what they mean. And the more that they talk, the more I can see that the lights are turning on. The lights are turning on. And there's, I'm going to say, less pressure to answer quickly. I see longer answers that tell me that we're translating from one language to another in our brain and then able to communicate it. This is just one thing that's different about Cambridge and Manchester. We only do med reminders. We are med reminding only. And it's important that they can, that they know the right dose, the right person, all of those things. And they can do, that's no problem at all. It's the communication bit. I know that can be a challenge for clients who are older and may have diminished hearing. So our caregivers on the Cambridge side, when we train them, we ask them to speak slower and do what they can to physically demonstrate what they're going to do. If I'm going to transfer you, I can say, I'm going to transfer you, or I can go, we're moving to the chair, Right. So we do encourage body language, not just verbal.
Yeah. And like you said, we do med reminders. So as a caveat to say, our license, we're not able to administer medication on the Cambridge side. We can give medication. So we can put it in their hand. We cannot put it in their mouth.
That's correct.
And for a caregiver. And on the Manchester side, of course, it's different.
So that's another big part of my training is med passing. So they go through when we hire a new caregiver, we help them get acclimated, and then we put them through a training process of videos, one-on-one with one of our CNAs, and then learning the computer system. And then finally, after they've completed the tests, I take the time and work with them on understanding how to administer each type of medication. And there are times that I will say, I think we need a couple more weeks. So I'm not going to med pass everyone right away. It just depends on how quickly they've absorbed and another chance for me to understand any type of language barrier, because that's a big, big deal when you're passing medication.
Sure, we're in no hurry.
Right.
Yeah.
And I explain that all the time. This is a nice, slow process.
Yeah, no doubt. We talk a little bit about hands-on training. Is it more effective than classroom training? And will you also elaborate on the game that you developed for the training sessions?
Sure. Specifically, we're going to talk about our 6-hour advanced caregiver course. Again, that was really built on what I could see was happening at the Manchester Care Homes. How do you replicate that? And how do you base it on our core values or competencies? So there's a clinical part. Again, painting by number. I know how to transfer. I'm using proper body mechanics. I'm able to give a bed bath properly. I'm not going to brush somebody's teeth while they're laying flat on the bed. It's a safe environment for them to spend, it's probably an hour and a half, everybody's hands-on. And we're doing it as a team, but we're doing it in a way that demonstrates respect and technical excellence. Those are the two competencies that go with the clinical part of the training program. Then we go through safety. It's another thing that, you think about on the Manchester side and the Cambridge side. Our caregivers are responsible for the safety of our clients and residents. They need to understand what to do in an emergency. They need to understand how to do the Heimlich maneuver. We do that there. And under that safety bit, what we're adding is initiative. We want to think ahead. We want to anticipate if there's a weather emergency, if there's, hot weather. Again, what are you doing to keep your client hydrated? There's nobody in the world that will tell me that we'll say it even any more than Sandi will, that skin is so important. Skin health is such a barometer of how you're feeling. So we talk about all that in safety. Then we go into client service. And client service adds, obviously client service, but it adds compassion. And it's all of them put together. So the competencies build on each other while the hands-on training is going. So I'm not going to say either or. I'm going to say they're both important. And the very end of our training, after we've done technical, we've done safety, we've done client service, which includes things like allergies. what to do if somebody has a dairy allergy. We had one in the care homes. And so that really heightened for me that we need to be paying attention, right? How do they answer those questions? The very final bit of training, the last hour, I mean, I'm got to tell you, 6 hours sounds like a really long time. And,
Right.
you know, the last hour is our, it's a hands-on interactive game challenge of things they have to do, their actions, wild card situations. All of our training is situationally based on client personas that we developed. We've got 32 client personas. How do they answer this question? You have to do a Heimlich maneuver right now. They have to get up and do it, right? Or another example would be, Pat needs a bed bath. Let's do that right now. Or I've got a client that's lost in the grocery store. What do you do? Well, it's open-ended. So they collaboratively work through the situation as they progress through the competencies, and they win our certificate when they complete the game. And people are screaming, they're having fun, they're high-fiving each other. And if you're learning in an environment that you're having fun in, you're more open.
Sure.
You're more open to learn. So I'm really super excited that, you know, we got to do that. And I think it's also very unique in the market. And it's the closest thing I can get to on the Cambridge side to a team environment like they have in Manchester.
Sure.
Yeah.
Great.
I want to add on to that.
Yeah,
a little
please.
bit. First of all, this training program is amazing. When you started it and started working on it and we pulled together the scenarios, it all came together. I hear from our staff all the time how much they're enjoying the training program, how much they're learning from it, how they feel so special that we are providing this for them, because I don't think that's so common. So we provide such strong training to our staff so they can meet the needs of our residents and clients on every level. So
It is remarkable to see the service failures just tank.
Yeah.
I mean,
so I love the classroom setting. Like Tammy said, it's a great, it's beautiful. It's collaboration, everything they learn from each other. The one-on-one though, I think also it plays a big role in, for me on the Manchester side, to understand where each caregiver is in their skill set.
Sure. Which takes me to the next question. Sandi, as Director of Nursing, how do you implement training to all of the Manchester care home staff while working around shift work?
Great question. So what I'll do is every few months, I will establish I'll meet with the manager and we'll pick a date and a time, and I'll show up at like 6:15 in the morning so I can get the night shift and the day shift, or 6:15 at night. So the day shift will stay over. It's cute. It's fun. I'll usually bring them dinner. We'll have, we'll open up the computer. We'll do a little PowerPoint and have, just a fun training. I'll pick a topic, whether it's nutrition, skin, skincare, anything, transferring, Hoyer lifts, feeding, catheter care. We'll just go through whatever. And then a whole training session will just be how to care for our patients with dementia.
Sure. And along those lines, Manchester Care Home training is based on the care needs of our residents. How can training for all of the conditions we treat be conducted? We have Parkinson's, we have dementia, we have ALS, we have all of these different conditions, MS, etc.
We have all of them. And I think we take excellent care of them because we teach our staff to understand that at the end of the day, a patient with Parkinson's, a patient with dementia, a patient with ALS, yes, they each have specific care needs and we meet them all the time, all day long. But the core care is, hygiene, skin. They're all going to require all of this type of care. Skin, feeding, are they on a pureed diet or are they on a soft mechanical diet? What does that look like for the resident? Thickened liquids, non-thickened liquids, crushed medicine, the whole thing. So it's all a matter of just pulling it all together and going from there.
Great. Wow, this is a lot to take in. We could talk about this for hours.
I could go on.
Of course we could.
So, we did the neurodegenerative series on the Cambridge side with national experts. It's harder on the Cambridge side when we have somebody with Lewy body or MS or PSP. We have to rely on Sandi to help train the caregivers.
That's so awful,
It's we must rely. No, we love relying on Sandi because she will remind us that it'll just be slower. She's still a human being with a condition that is difficult. This is what to anticipate. I remember specifically I think it was the PSP session, that our facilitator recommended colored plates
I remember that.
so that the person with this condition can see the food better. And there are perception
like
things,
that, yeah.
walking, sensory things that are going on with them that I wouldn't be able to train specifically on that. And you wouldn't want me to. You would want Sandi to do that. And so that's a
Right.
real benefit to having a director of nursing that is on both sides of the organization and has current residents with conditions that, can give real life examples.
Right.
So,
But to learn
yeah.
those tools and tactics that are real,
Mhm.
to be able to implement them in real life,
Mhm.
that's amazing. Will you speak a little bit about our bereavement process? I know our caregivers get really, really close with clients and residents. I mean, we're part of the family often. And so will you speak about that a little bit?
Absolutely. This has been, without a doubt, we have 20 and 25 people on the monthly Zoom calls with our grief doc. Dr. Tanya is our grief doc, and she's been with us for 3 years. She comes in once a quarter for an in-person session, and it's standing room only when she's there. She talks about coping with any kind of loss, coping with change, coping with the changes life gives you as a caregiver, providing care for our caregivers. She has the sessions, they're an hour long. Last session she talked about in coping with change was a book from the 80s called Where's My Cheese?
Oh my God, I love that.
Right. It's great, right? But it was fantastic because she took it through the lens of a caregiver. And then she took it through the lens of a client. My cheese is always here. My cheese is always here.
Who moved
Where's my cheese? Yeah. Who moved my cheese? So that's what she took it from that frame. She's talked about steel magnolias. She makes it real for caregivers.
Yeah.
And then caregivers will say, hey, I've lost my daughter. I'm caring for a client right now, but my daughter just passed and I'm going through intense grief and guilt. And Dr. Tanya, we completely as a company are invested in our employees. That's no cost to the employee. Dr. Tanya has ongoing sessions with at least 3 or 4 of our current caregivers to help them through personal tragedy or losing a client. We had a caregiver last week who our client passed away in her arms. And she's a relatively new caregiver with us. And as she's talking through it on the phone with me, her voice is breaking. And it was really easy to say, we got Dr. Tanya. I'm so grateful as a company that we invest in the emotional and mental health of our caregivers so that each day they go to a client, they go with a full and open heart.
Yeah.
Knowing that we've taken care of them. In many cases, we talked about the fact that a lot of our caregivers are immigrants. Their home is across an ocean. And that's also a loss. And so she's really great at supporting the caregivers so that they can get back. We've had a couple of them lately. And so she's also available for corporate people.
Yeah.
But yeah.
We have a tagline, we make lives better.
Yeah.
It's a double entendre. We make the lives of our clients and residents better. But we also make the lives of our caregivers better. And I think with programs like that we have through the Manchester Living Institute, it rings true. So
100%.
what haven't I asked you that I should? Tammy, I'm going to start with you.
What's been the one thing that surprised me about having the caregivers together in a training program?
Ooh, that's a good one. What's the answer?
It's really interesting. This is interesting to me.
Yeah.
I'm going to nerd out. When you ask anybody, hey, do you know how to do this? Is a real example. Hey, I know how to do the Heimlich maneuver. Raise your hand. Great, all of you do. Fantastic. Now show me. All the hands go down. There's don't really know for sure. So you get answers. Anyone going through an interview, anyone working in a company will want to tell you what you want to hear. The light bulb moment for me was when we said, okay, cool. This is a safe environment. And we say this all the time. There's no video camera here. We just be real. Everybody stand up, look at the person next to you, and we're going to do it together. We're going to do the Heimlich maneuver. And while they had technically been trained on it, as they got their CNA, it was okay. They learned it again, put their hands in it again. I guess it's like a practicum, right? So we're doing it again, but I would have gotten 100% of the people to say, yes, I know how to do the IOMIC maneuver, when in reality, maybe 8 out of the 10 knew.
That's a good
And
one.
so it was a real light bulb moment that there's nothing that replaces being together and learning as a team.
Yeah.
I just can't do it on a video chat. I can't do it with an online test.
Sure.
It's just not going to work.
And just have that face-to-face demonstration.
Yes.
And role modeling. Yes. I
You
agree.
see caregivers leave that training session with their chest bowed out and confidence
Yes,
that they can take on the world.
100%.
Sandy, what haven't I asked you that I should?
Figuring out really unique and different ways on how to empower the caregivers to do things outside the box a little bit. Not just going by the schedule, but, oh, this is so fun and creative, let's do that. Just figuring out ways to help them feel a little more confident.
Great. This is incredible. I really appreciate both you guys coming on the show today.
I'm happy to be here. This is
awesome.
great.
Me too.
This is
Thank
great.
you. Thank you for having us, Brian.
Sure, Sandy. All right, let's move on to the nugget portion. This was posted by my friend Teepa Snow, and I felt compelled to share it. Don't contain me, restrain me, or just entertain me. Engage with me in life. Teepa Snow, I read it, I felt it, I shared it, and I hope you do too. All right, you guys, we're going to move on to the lightning round. This is an opportunity for viewers to get to know you guys outside of this clinical training world. Who are you? All right, we're going to start with Tammy and roll to Sandy in rotation. Tammy, where were you born and raised?
Fort Smith, Arkansas. Go Hogs.
Savannah, Georgia.
Savannah, Georgia. Tammy, college and degree.
BSBA Human Resources, University of Arkansas. Go Hogs.
Go Hogs. Sandy,
BS in education from University of Georgia, and then my nursing degree in Texas.
go Bulldogs.
Go Bulldogs.
There you go.
Yes.
Tammy, what's your second language? That doesn't entail the middle finger. What's your
Je
second
parle
language?
un peu de français.
Oh, wow. Sandy?
I don't have a second language. I have you for that.
There you go. My middle finger. Tammy, do you play a musical instrument?
I play a piano, but I play it so bad. Everything sounds like it's a funeral march.
Oh,
It doesn't matter what song it is. It's so slow.
Wow.
So yeah,
That's
I do
quite the
try.
endorsement. Sandy, do
Do
you
not
play a
play a
musical
musical
instrument?
instrument.
Tammy, do you stay in touch with childhood friends?
I do.
Sandy,
Yes, absolutely.
Tammy, spicy food or plain Jane?
Oh, spicy.
Middle.
Middle?
Mm-hmm.
Tammy, call or text?
Text.
Sandy,
Text.
Tammy, ever broken a bone?
Yes, I broke my pelvis.
Sandy,
Never.
Never. One piece. Tammy, favorite ice cream flavor?
Butter pecan.
Sandy,
Chocolate.
Tammy, can you change a tire?
Yes.
No.
Tammy, iPhone or Android?
iPhone.
Sandy,
iPhone. I didn't have a choice.
That's for sure. Tammy, are you sentimental?
No,
Really?
I am not.
Sandy, are you sentimental?
100%.
Very. Tammy, karaoke, yes or no?
Heck yes.
Heck no.
Tammy, favorite band or artist?
I'm going to say the Gap Band.
Okay, Sandy.
I'm going to go with Neil Diamond.
All right. Tammy, if you could go to outer space with no guarantee of returning, would you go?
You could go with me.
I would go with Sandy. Because I have to, if I don't have to go by myself.
Go together.
Yeah.
All right, Tammy, what is the most gratifying part of your job?
Having the freedom to be creative in taking care of our caregivers.
I love
Sandy.
that. I love what she said. I think seeing the residents thrive, though sometimes residents will come to us and it's not looking great. Like they're coming from, whether it's a facility or a home, the care they were receiving wasn't the care that they needed. So when they come to us and the families watch and we all watch and the caregivers, and we'll see them gain a little weight, start to be a little bit more alert, a little more communicative. And it's really fun to see them thrive.
Results.
And yes, absolutely. I mean, we even have patients that we take off of hospice because they're thriving so much.
Fantastic. Thank you guys both for being here.
Thank you for
It's
having
very
us.
informative. I appreciate your insight and expertise. If you want to see this episode again or any past episodes, you can go to YouTube, Facebook, or wherever you get your social media. In closing, if there's anything I can do for you, please don't hesitate to call directly. If you are a caregiver interested in working for Manchester Care Homes or Cambridge Caregivers, please go to mlhire.com. Also, we're going to put up both of your email addresses in the event that somebody wants to reach out to you. And in closing, I have some quotes from our senior leadership team that we're going to roll right before the credits. I think you'll want to stay tuned for those. So thanks for watching today.